Welcome back. You are watching the Building Your Interview Skills, a part of the Job Hunting 101 series. My name is Tanya Weathers, Career Development Counselor at the Tampa Bay Workforce Alliance. Today I have two employers with us to talk a little bit about what they think an interview should be. I have with me Miss Debbie Whiteco and Heather Mueller. Please, ladies, if you don't mind to introduce yourselves.
I am Debbie Whiteco, and I am a recruiter at St. Joseph's Hospitals. We are part of the Baycare Health System, so a large employer kind of across the continuum of care.
All right. And Heather?
My name is Heather Mueller, and I'm the manager of Campus and Pipeline Development at Raymond James Financial, and we are a financial services company. We consider ourselves to be the premier alternative to Wall Street.
Perfect. Thank you. Welcome, ladies. Definitely. So what we will be talking about is a little bit of what I talk about in my training classes. I go through the business etiquette tips that all job seekers should follow if they want the best interview outcome. Now, the first thing, as I always say, is thank the employer at the beginning and the end. Wouldn't you agree, ladies?
Absolutely. I think it's really important for them to understand that you're excited to be there and that you really appreciate their time.
Okay, perfect. Now, the next thing I always say is to introduce yourself to the receptionist. I believe that she is the key, sometimes the big key to whether or not you get in the door. What do you think?
I totally agree.
Okay.
Being courteous, respectful, having good behavior out in the lobby and with the receptionist is a definite plus.
Definitely. Okay. Shake hands with everyone. Now, I always give the tip, it is better to shake hands with the pressure on the thumb instead of the whole hand, because we know most HR managers are women, and we don't want the men to be ruining our hands, our nice hands, and breaking them. So I always say still shake hands, but be gentle. Definitely be gentle. Now, you always want to make sure to ask for business cards as well, because you are going to send a follow-up letter after that interview. You must. A thank you follow-up letter, and you want to make sure you spell the name correctly, that you have the correct email address or phone number to send it back to. Also, just in case the interview didn't go the way that you want it to and you don't get the job, at least you will have a contact. And if at the end, maybe 6 months, a year later, there's another job that comes up that you might qualify for, you'll have the name, you'll have the number and email of the person that is directly in contact with the hiring manager. Okay? Now, the next thing I always suggest is to sit when you're asked to be sit and not before. I think it's just a basic business etiquette tip. Don't
Absolutely.
you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it follows the same as if you were going out to dinner with a client. You would wait and you would follow the same etiquette rules.
Exactly. Because we say, you don't want to just come in and plop down and act like it's your own seat in your own office. Simply say, may I? Okay? Now, the next tip I like to get is do not put your purse, your bag, or your briefcase on the desk. Because there's some employers that might just shoo it off. It's kind of similar, you just putting your feet on someone's table, walking into their house. So we always say not to do that because it's just poor etiquette. Would you agree?
I do.
Okay.
I think it also shows a sign of disrespect. You want to be comfortable. You want the interview to feel like it's flowing naturally. But if you walk in there and set your stuff down, it's like you're trying to take over. So it's important to have respect.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Now, to turn your cell phones completely off is another suggestion. I know some say maybe you shouldn't even take them at all, right? Do you think that's a better direction to go, to not even take them?
I think turning it off is okay, but it is very distracting in the middle of an interview.
I know even having it on vibrate
Absolutely.
can be distracting because we know it's not just a second of vibrate, it can last a minute, that
Right.
vibrating. And so I know that can be distracting sometimes.
And I think it's embarrassing to most applicants if they get a call in the middle of an interview. And as a recruiter, if I have an applicant that takes a call in the middle of an interview, that's a major no-no.
Yeah.
But if it continues to buzz or vibrate,
Right.
you almost want to say, do you need to get that? And then that really just creates an awkward
awkward
situation. So
situation.
absolutely turn it all the way off.
Okay, all right, perfect. I also suggest pause for 5 seconds to gather your thoughts, because there's a lot of questions being thrown at you all the time, and interviewers are just throwing question after question. Job seekers, they're already nervous, and they just don't know how to answer the question sometimes. So I always recommend pause for 5 seconds, or say, can I have a moment to think about that? Pause, and then answer the question. How do you feel about that?
Especially with some of the behavioral questions
Okay.
that we ask, I would hope that people would take,
The
a little bit of time to think of a good situation to share with me.
Okay.
So I value that they take that
That
time.
they take the time.
Yes.
Okay. Stick to an interesting tone. Interesting tone. A dull tone doesn't seem like you're so interested in the job.
Right.
Or maybe even that you're even skillful enough, and maybe that's why you have a dull tone and you're not able to talk about it in an exciting way. So I always say stick to an interesting tone when it comes to that. Practice. When you agree to
Right.
practice with family, practice with friends, maybe even do a mock interview. Give them a list of questions and say, hey, ask questions to me and see how I react. Let me know in places that I can improve.
Absolutely. I know that people typically hate to do mock interviews,
Yeah.
but it really is helpful. And I would say at a minimum, at least do some research on what are some typical interview questions that an employer is going to ask. So you, at a minimum, can practice with yourself. If I were to be asked this, how would I answer it? Always be kind of prepared.
Yes, I also say too to practice in front of a mirror, because sometimes our body language and our facial expressions, don't relay what we're really trying to say. We might be speaking really excited about something, but our face doesn't look excited at all. So I always say practice in a mirror. That can help as well. Limit the like, I don't know, to limit those, because I think it sounds like you don't really know what you're talking about when you're saying or like. Would you agree?
I totally agree.
Okay, good. All right. So because those tend to be weak words, and other types of weak words we have are I think so or I hope so. And there's a difference if I say I think I know Microsoft Word compared to I know Microsoft Word. So I always say to avoid those weak words, because again, it makes it sound like you don't know and you're not confident and you don't have the skills.
Absolutely. I think, there I go saying it, bad example. It's important that you project yourself in confidence and that you can really show to them the value that you're going to bring. Because again, if you don't show confidence in your ideas and your examples, why are they going to buy it?
And how can they show confidence in you if you're not showing it within yourself?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Don't apologize for being nervous. That's another tip that I always give, because I have a lot of candidates that come up to me after I finish the class just to ask more questions, follow up, and I know they tend to get nervous to speak to me sometimes, and they'll say, oh my goodness, I'm shaking, can you see? And even when I'm in the interview, I do the same thing, but I'll look at them and I'll say, I don't see you shaking. I don't see the sweat rolling down your head, but they think that they do. And we kind of all have our own ways in how to deal with nervousness, I believe. And sometimes it is not necessary to mention it because it can make it worse. It can definitely make it worse. We know that you're nervous. The employer, I believe, knows that you're nervous. But we have to remember is that they are human too. You guys are human too, and you get nervous as well. And I believe mentioning it kind of makes it a little bit worse.
I think most recruiters really realize that the people before them are probably nervous to some extent. And I think people that, are kind of used to interviewing others, part of what we want to do is put people at ease so that they can feel okay to answer the questions.
Absolutely.
So it's a little bit of a two-way street there.
Yes,
Yeah.
it can be. It can be. So I think it's okay to be nervous. It is. Just don't, it's not necessary to mention it. Okay. And keep a positive and friendly attitude. Definitely. You always want to do that. And I think a way to do that is to make a connection, maybe a connection with the employer. Do you recommend maybe chit-chat a little bit, maybe asking about a picture on the wall or an award that's on the wall? Do you as an employer appreciate that to kind of die down the mood and not have it all stuffy all the time?
I think what I like to do is a little bit of that chit chat right at the beginning.
Okay.
To hopefully put the person at a little bit of ease as we start out, and to make it friendly and positive right from the beginning.
Getting, okay.
My recommendation would be, as you get into the interview, I would limit the chit chat and really kind of stick to the questions.
Sure.
Okay.
And I think too, when you can find that connection, it also helps the employer to be able to remember you. Keep in mind that you are trying to find a way to stick out amongst the other people in a positive way. So if they have a golf poster or trophy on the wall and you play golf too, definitely mention it, because this is something that you have in common, and that's going to be a positive thing that they're going to remember about you.
Okay, okay, good. Now, I know that sometimes candidates will say things about an award perhaps that you have on your wall. Let's say they said, "Oh, I found out that you guys won an award last year." Do you like when candidates mention about something in your company that not everybody might have known about it, or you had to do some research to find out about it?
Absolutely. To me, it shows that they have a genuine interest in the company.
Okay.
A lot of times stuff like that, depending on the award, it might not be on the front page of the website. So they really had to dig a little, and they really had to think about it. Or maybe they've truly been following you while they're in school or for the past few years. So to me, it shows a real interest in your company.
Now, another tip that I teach is follow the interviewer's lead and not to interrupt. What do you think about that?
I think that's a good way to proceed. As an interviewer, I have certain things that I want to find out about people, and it is much easier to kind of get the information that I need on my end without having interruptions or side conversations about something that isn't really pertaining to the question. So
Exactly.
sticking right to it is a good.
Sticking to it and let you do the questioning, let you lead. All right, we'll remember that. Speak slow and confident. Speak slow and confident, definitely. And I'm sure that's an easy thing to understand. You want to speak slow so you can be understood, and confident so you feel that, okay, they know that I can do this job. Okay. We also teach make eye contact. Because usually if you don't make eye contact, it seems as though you might not be trustworthy or you're not confident in yourself.
You're
correct?
hiding something, possibly.
You're hiding something.
Ashamed.
Exactly. Now, another thing, the firm handshake, as we said earlier. I definitely recommend the stiffness at the thumb and not the whole hand. Not the whole hand. Also, do not talk negatively about a past employer.
So important.
Yes. You shook your head like, yeah, I've had that.
Yeah, I think you really want to be honest in an interview, but I think
Okay.
it's so important that you avoid negativity. If they ask you about a previous employer or your current employer, it's important to explain the reason why you're leaving. Why you're interested in looking isn't about them. It's because you're looking for other opportunities for yourself. Anytime that you start to portray them as negative, you're actually going to put a negative portrayal of yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Now, we also have, because with this question, it's always big, because what if they were fired? And all they have is negativity. Or if they were fired, unjustly or just, whichever, how do you suggest someone mention that they were fired? Or should they at all? Should they at all?
I think it's important to be honest
Okay.
if that's happened. Most employers these days do reference checks. It's liable to come out on a reference check, and if you haven't presented your side of the situation first, I think it's to your disadvantage.
Okay.
I like it, actually, if that's happened to someone, and in talking about the situation, it seems like they really took it to heart, that they tried to think about how that won't happen again, and
How they're on
perhaps
the
really,
improvement track.
right, grew or improved from whatever it was.
Okay.
If it is a situation where someone feels like they were unjustly terminated, I think it's okay to share that, but to be in a positive, kind of politically correct way of presenting that side. And I often think that when people share it with me, there's probably two sides to whatever the situation was. their side, the employer's side, and often I think probably the real
The real
truth is
truth
somewhere
side,
in the middle
yeah.
of the two. You know, so I definitely think it's something that should be shared
And
honestly.
just be honest. Okay, okay. Now, in my class, I also teach about the tone of your voice. How important do you think that the tone overall, is it more about what you say or how you say it? What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's very important.
Okay,
And I very much like the face-to-face interview because I get a lot from nonverbal communication. So separate from the words, the tone, the face, people's body language, all that says a lot about a person. And as someone that recruits for healthcare, I'm looking for someone that is positive and caring and compassionate and respectful and honest. And all those things are things I gather many times not from just the words.
okay, okay. And you wanted to comment to that?
Well, she summed it up very well. I would just add, the words are important too, but when they're delivered, when you're able to show your skills and your knowledge and deliver it in a very positive, friendly demeanor, it's really going to, to help sum it up nicely. If you can deliver the information and you clearly know what you want, I mean, you know how to express your experience, but you don't sound excited about it or you sound unhappy or miserable, you have to remember this is a competition and somebody else is going to come in behind you and have the same skills and knowledge but may not have the right energy, and it's going to go towards the person that has the combination of both.
Exactly. And I get a lot of my candidates who, because of their nervousness or because, they might not know how to express themselves, in the right way, that also too ends up having a lower tone or a more of a monotone, or their body language isn't how it should be. Are there tips that you have, maybe that you can provide a job seeker on how to express themselves a little bit better, even though they're nervous, even though they're not sure? Any tips?
I think people should try and just be themselves.
Just be themselves.
Be themselves,
Okay.
and hopefully the way they usually are is what the job is calling for. I don't think trying to be something that you're not is probably going to be helpful.
Sure.
Either way.
And I think this is where it comes back to practice. You had said before, the more that somebody practices, the more comfortable that they're going to be.
Okay.
And I certainly don't want someone wasting their time, going to interviews that they're not truly interested in, but keeping in mind that, the first interview somebody has is probably going to be the hardest. And then as they get into the swing of having interviews, they're going to become more and more comfortable. So whether that means real interviews or doing the whole mock thing,
interviews.
again, practice is key.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Can I add
Yes.
another tip, Tanya? I think that if people include in their research really what are the qualifications of this position that they're interviewing for, and what are they bringing to it that are strengths for that position,
Okay.
and presenting that. And sometimes I think people choose the wrong position to apply for, and then hopefully as a recruiter we can fit them into what might be, because different personalities work better at different things.
This is true.
Different strengths work better at different kinds of things. So doing your research there and presenting your strengths for that position is a good thing too.
Okay. Now, usually I say start with the job description to do that research. Do you think there are other ways, other places maybe you should look?
I think, today lots of companies have the website that includes like their values and what kinds of things are important to them. Doing research on that and trying to think about what are your strengths that fit in with what that company wants is one way to do it.
Okay.
Networking with other people that know something about
another
that
great way to
position
do
so
it.
you can
Okay.
get a little inside feel for it could be a good thing.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, I want to talk about the hot questions, the most commonly asked questions that most interviewers tend to ask. Okay, so the first one is the tell me about yourself. The tell me about yourself. What do employers really want to hear? What do they really want? Do they want to know, oh, well, I have 5 kids and I have 2 cats?
No.
What do they
Not
really
at all.
want to hear?
Definitely keep it professional. Keep
Okay.
in mind why you're there. You're there to get a job.
Okay.
You know, while it might be appropriate at some point that some piece of your or some aspect of your family or your personal life might fit, and that's fine, I wouldn't start with that. It's important to highlight what it is about you that is a good fit for this job. Go ahead and make the connection for them in the beginning.
Okay. Okay. You want to add? Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add that, again, usually a person is called for interview if they meet the minimum requirement for that position. So it is a given that the skills and education are there. And that's probably something that we all explore to make sure, but that's the given. Above that is more, what are you like as a person and what do you bring into this,
Okay.
this position? Those kinds of values and stability, goals for the future, those kinds of things that make you unique but are going to really bring something extra to that position.
I agree.
That's what I want to know.
What is it, your goals? Why are you here? What can you bring us? Okay, all right. Now the next question is, why do you feel you would be a best candidate for the position? I tend to get kind of, if good and not so good questions, or answers rather, when it comes to that, when I ask the class normally. What is it do's and don'ts when answering this question? And why do you think you're the best candidate? The do's and don'ts.
That one I think can be tricky because you want to balance it with showcasing your experience but not appearing too arrogant.
Okay.
You want to make sure that you walk that fine line. So it's important, again, maybe steer away from the word I think, the phrase I think, and just explain straight out, what is it that you bring to this position? How are you going to add value to the firm or
Okay.
to the company? You could also tie it back to the job description, and that way, again, you can tie it together for them.
Okay, okay. Now another one we have is, tell me about your work and school experiences. Now should they just read straight from the resume? Is that what you're looking for?
No, I like people to talk to me
Okay.
about what they've done and what were important responsibilities in their job and why they liked it, why they
Okay.
left.
Okay.
If there are gaps in their employment, what were they doing through that time period?
In the gaps. Okay, okay. Now another one we have is, describe your strengths and weaknesses. Now this is a big one. Most of my classes hate this question. And I tell you what I tell them is, when it comes to the strength, make sure that it's a strength that not everyone is going to say. I always hear the detail-oriented, the timely, I'm dedicated, motivated. I'm sure you guys have heard those often as well.
Sure.
And so I say, steer away from those often used strengths. Talk really about your strengths. What are you great with within your occupation, within your industry? And then with the weaknesses, my opinion is always to express something that you truly have a weaknesses within your professional life, okay? We don't want to go into the personal weaknesses, but into your professional life, maybe think of a time that you felt you were a little weak and ways that you can improve it. Always end with ways, in a positive way, to improve it, whether ways you're currently working on or have worked on to improve it. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think too, with the strength, also give an example. Don't just tell them what your strength is, but give them an example of how you used it at one point.
Okay.
Why it's your strength. Because then again, anyone can say it's a strength, but tell us really how it is.
Really how it is. Okay. All right. Now, the next one. What do you know about us? What do you know about us? Is there research helpful in order to do that? I'm assuming maybe go to the website. Are there any other places that good research would come from? A good
Many of the
subject
people
matter?
that I talk to have had experiences at the hospital, either as a patient themselves or family members.
Okay.
And many times I have people that want to work there because of that experience on the other side of the bed. And that makes me feel good. They want to work there because they've had something positive from people that already work there.
Okay.
So I like that.
All right. Now the next one we have is, why do you want to work here? Now what can impress an employer with that question? Why do you want to work here? Name something that you think that somebody could say that make you say, wow, okay.
Well, I mean, again, it comes back to research. If I ask them why they want to work here, I really want something specific.
Okay.
Not just, oh, it's a great company. We often get, I'm looking for free Bucks tickets, you know.
Of course.
Come up with a legitimate reason, which we do not get free Bucks tickets, by the way. Come up with a legitimate reason why you think this company is a great fit for you. Whether it's because you looked at it on the website, maybe you do have a family member that currently works there, maybe you attended, for me, I work a lot with college students, you attended an information session, but be specific and be able to articulate back to the recruiter exactly why you think they would fit in.
Okay, okay. Now, we have another question. What do you think you can contribute to the company? Now, does that kind of go along the same lines of go for the job description, go for the research? Would you agree that that would be the kind of lines that you would go to, what you can contribute? Yes? Okay.
I think that kind of goes along too with the strengths. If they've talked about their strengths already, that hopefully those would be the contributions.
Okay, all right. Now, one question that is a hot topic right now is the logins to social media. And the new thing is that some employers are out there asking for login information so they can find out more, maybe personal information about the candidate that the candidate isn't normally revealing. How do you feel about the login, the social media login?
You know, I think this is a hot topic throughout the country for all different aspects of this situation. You know, I think as time goes by, there will be more and more policies from employers on how this is used and how members of that organization should be using it. You know, legally, I think there's questions both ways. What can be looked at, you know, privacy issues. I think people do need to be careful, and not just for employment purposes, but things that are out there that other people can access. You never know who's going to see that one day, and it might impact any part of your life. So I do think people need to be careful.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I think employers are probably struggling now to come up with policies and how they're going to proceed with all this, and probably things will change over the next couple of years as those get put in place. And
Okay.
Right.
How do you think a candidate should answer a question if they are asked for their login?
That's very tricky. You know, I think that you could possibly ask an alternative. You know, we don't use that practice, so you know, I think asking someone to give away their password and login information is kind of personal. So maybe you could suggest to them, how about, you know, I friend you instead? That might be an alternative. That might feel a little less invasive.
Yeah, that's an option. Okay.
But, you know, just to kind of add on to what Debbie was saying, I think it's so important that whether it's right or wrong that companies are doing this, you need to be prepared for it to happen. And it's really, really important that you manage your online image. You just don't know what's searchable. I don't know if you've ever tried it, but you can put your own name in and do a search and, you know, see what comes up. Keep in mind that while you may think that, you know, Facebook, for example, is for just your friends and family, if it can be found, they can view it. So I think it's very important to keep everything as professional as possible.
Okay. Well, thank you, ladies, so much. I'm sure that our viewers are really going to appreciate the answers and the opinions and the tips that you provided. So thank you. Now, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we will be discussing follow-ups. Thank you, and stay tuned.